Chapter 28, Section 4. As the Cold War continued, it was going to have a huge impact on Americans. We had to prepare ourselves for the possibility of almost instant war. I mean, the military needed to streamline. If we had to rearm, we had to be able to do it quickly. So all things like the Department of Defense replacing the War Department. You had the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which was the combined leadership of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The National Security Council was created to advise the president. And as we've already mentioned, the CIA was around to gather military and political information around the world. Now, Truman was accused of being tough only on communism abroad. And they said right under his nose, communism was infiltrating the U.S. government. And so you saw the creation of the Loyalty Review Board. And it was set up to investigate federal employees. And under their reviews, 20,000 employees are investigated, 2,000 resign, and 300 are fired for being what they called security risks. Doesn't mean necessarily any of them were guilty of being communists, but it was suspected. And some could resign, not because they're communists, but they don't like being investigated like this. Congress had created HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee. It wasn't brand new. It was from actually before World War II. Originally to investigate fascism in the U.S. And it would investigate any ties that people had to fascist organizations originally and now communist organizations. In 1947, HUAC is going to investigate the accusation that Hollywood was full of communists. And you're going to end up with a group that becomes known as the Hollywood 10. The Hollywood 10, rather than ask the questions that were asked of them, they went to jail. Now, it wasn't any big name actors or anything like that. It was mostly writers or directors or producers and stuff like that. But they go to jail because they won't answer the questions. You can't hold them forever for that. When they get released, they find out they've been blacklisted. Nobody would hire them. There was another organization that spoke out against the role that HUAC was playing in this, and that other organization all of a sudden found themselves being investigated by the FBI. And their membership starts to drop. Because who wants to join an organization that the FBI is investigating? Another thing that HUAC is going to investigate is suspected spies. Which brings us to Alger Hiss. Alger Hiss was accused of giving State Department documents to the Soviets. Search his house. Don't find anything. He ends up actually suing for slander. Saying you had no proof. You gave me a bad name. They get another tip or whatever. They go back, they search the house again, and this time they find microfilms hidden in a pumpkin in his house. Microfilms of State Department documents. Does this prove he's a spy? No. But he did lie under oath about taking State Department documents. That's perjury. But you don't have any proof that he gave those documents to the Soviets. He gets 5 years in prison for the perjury, and for decades, Hiss denied that he was a spy. In 1992, once the Soviet Union has fallen apart, a Russian historian is going to announce that he's looked through some secret Soviet files and can find no evidence of Hiss being a spy for the Soviet Union. But then in 1996, some secret Soviet cables, some messages from World War II are released. It was in 1996 that they had the proof that Hiss was guilty of being a spy. The Soviets do have record of him. But that was the same year Hiss died. So he got away with the spy portion of it for his whole life. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg are convicted in 1951 of giving atomic energy secrets to the Soviets. Now, they claimed that they were just two innocent victims of all this anti-communist hysteria. They're executed in 1953 for being spies. To today, there's actually some questions about what she knew. Was she just guilty by association with him? There's pretty good proof about him, her. Some of that could be considered questionable. Congress passes the Internal Security Act. Internal Security Act requires Communist Party members and organizations to register. It's not illegal to be a communist. The Internal Security Act said, we just want you to let us know. It also set strict controls of communist sympathizing immigrants from those parts of the world. This brings us to Joseph McCarthy. Joseph McCarthy is going to help fuel the fear that communists were everywhere. He was a senator from Wisconsin, and this era of McCarthyism is going to begin in 1950, when he claimed that he had a list of communists working at the State Department. But he never shows the list. But if you're the State Department, you've got to investigate. And you had dozens that lost their jobs for being security risks. And McCarthy goes on to question the loyalty of hundreds of government employees, almost never producing any evidence. But people listened to McCarthy because of their fear of communism. And it spread, and what if it comes here? And so when he warns of communism, people listened. And because of his power in the Senate, he very rarely was ever challenged. One congresswoman does challenge him, though. Margaret Chase Smith is going to issue the Declaration of Conscience. And it condemned those who turned the Senate into an arena of hate and character assassination. Nowhere in it does it mention Joseph McCarthy, but people knew who it was referring to. But otherwise, few other people ever criticized McCarthy. The president didn't even criticize him. But in 1954, McCarthy is going to accuse that there were communists in the army. And hearings are going to be held for 35 days over this accusation. But McCarthy failed to produce any evidence to support these claims. A few days later, McCarthy is going to be condemned by the Senate for conduct unbecoming a senator. McCarthy doesn't live very much longer after this. In 1957, at the age of 48, Joseph McCarthy dies from liver failure. Besides being known for his rude behavior, McCarthy was also known for his heavy drinking. After he dies, it comes out that even to get elected to the Senate, he had lied. He had lied about his opponent's campaign finances in the election, and he had lied about his military record in World War II. He said he had flown 30 combat flights in World War II, whereas in actuality, he had actually flown none.